I've never been the kind of guy who makes big decisions lightly. But if I could go back and undo one thing in my life, it would be that moment. The moment I made a deal with my boss to get ahead, and paid the price for it. It's funny how something so simple, a choice that felt almost like a business transaction at the time, can change everything. But then again, life doesn't always give you a chance to take the easy road. I didn't see the trap I was walking into until it was too late. I'd been working at the same company for nearly 5 years, and by all accounts, I should have been doing better. On paper, I had the experience, the qualifications, and the ambition. But somewhere along the way, I'd hit a wall, an invisible ceiling that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how many extra hours I put in, I couldn't seem to break through. The frustration was becoming unbearable. Every time a new position opened up, I'd see others, less qualified, get promoted ahead of me. I watched it happen over and over again. People who played the game better, people who knew the right people, people who had something I didn't. And that something, I realized, wasn't just about the skills or the hard work. It was about leverage. About knowing how to position yourself in a way that made you indispensable to the higher-ups. And I wasn't doing that. I can still remember the last time I got passed over for a promotion. I had been so sure this time it would be different. I'd been working late, taking on extra projects, doing everything I could to prove I was ready. I had the meetings, I had the numbers, and I thought I had the respect. But the promotion went to someone else, someone who'd barely been at the company for 2 years. It felt like I was doing everything right, but nothing ever came from it. I was stuck in the same position, working just as hard, but the people who were getting ahead weren't the ones who deserved it. At least, that's how it seemed to me at the time. I couldn't help but feel resentful. I was doing everything right. Why wasn't I moving up like they were? I wasn't just angry at the system, I was angry at myself. I felt small, like I wasn't enough. And that's when I started to wonder, what would it take to get ahead? In the beginning, I told myself I wasn't like those people who played dirty. I believed that hard work, integrity, and doing the right thing would get me to where I needed to be. But as time went on, I began to realize that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how good I was at my job, I was still getting passed over. I was stuck in a cycle, waiting for someone to notice me, and it never happened. The harder I worked, the more invisible I became. Maybe I needed to change how I played the game. What I didn't know then was that the decision I was about to make would not only change my career but would leave me with a regret so deep, that I would spend years wondering if it was all worth it. I first met Jessica Harper, my boss, when I started working at the company, and from the moment I laid eyes on her, I knew she was someone who commanded attention. At 45, Jessica wasn't just another boss, she was the kind of woman who made the entire room pause when she walked in. With her sharp features and impeccably tailored suits, she exuded authority without even trying. She didn't need to raise her voice to be heard, her presence alone was enough to make people take notice. Jessica had been with the company long before I arrived. She'd climbed the corporate ladder over the course of many years. By the time I joined, she was already at the top, holding the kind of power and respect most people could only dream of. From the outside, she had everything in place, a career built on sheer willpower, a reputation that others in the company feared and admired, and the kind of position that most people could only fantasize about. But there was a side to Jessica that wasn't so easy to see. As much as she commanded attention professionally, her personal life seemed to be something she kept entirely out of view. Despite all her success, she wasn't married. She had no partner, no family, nothing that hinted at a personal life beyond the office. At 45, it was hard not to notice the absence of what most people would consider normal for someone her age. While everyone else in the office was busy balancing their work with family or relationships, Jessica didn't have time for any of that. Her life seemed entirely consumed by the company. There were no family pictures on her desk, no mention of vacations or weekend plans. It was all business. I admired her from a distance. She had what I wanted, the promotions, the opportunities, and power. I knew that if I wanted to move up, I'd need to get closer to her. I'd need to earn her trust, her respect, because in this company, she was the one holding the keys to everything I hoped to achieve. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when I first heard about the promotion. The office buzz was different that day, like everyone knew something important was coming, but no one wanted to say it out loud. I remember sitting at my desk, glancing at the company-wide email that had just been sent out about the promotion. I had been working here for over 5 years, doing everything I could to prove myself. I was good at my job, damn good, if I'm being honest. I knew the systems, I understood the clients, and I had a reputation for getting things done under pressure. I had put in long hours, stayed late when necessary, and kept a low profile, always focusing on the work. But despite my efforts, promotions had never been within reach. The top spots were always given to others, some with more connections or who had just been in the company longer. It was always out of my grasp. But now? This new role, this promotion, felt different. It felt like it was meant for me. The job description seemed to check all the boxes. It was a higher management position, something that would put me in charge of a small team, overseeing critical projects. More responsibility, more respect, and, of course, a salary boost that would give a bit of financial freedom I had always dreamed of. I pictured myself in that corner office, sitting at the head of the table, calling the shots. The thought alone was enough to make me sit up straighter in my chair. But then, reality hit. I wasn't the only one eyeing that role. I wasn't the only one who thought they were qualified. There were a handful of others who had been with the company longer, some of them with more connections, and others who had worked directly with upper management for years. The competition would be fierce. I knew that. The kind of friendly competition where everyone is pretending to be supportive, but underneath, everyone is trying to one-up each other. The kind of environment where you smile and shake hands, but you also know that only one person will make it to the top. And it's not always the most qualified person, it's the one who plays the game right. For the first time in a while, the pressure started to build inside me. This was my chance to finally break through, to prove I was more than just a worker bee. I could already see how this would change my life. I was tired of always worried about my bills, my student loans, and whether I could afford anything extra. This promotion would solve all of that. I could finally move out of my tiny apartment and even start saving for the future. But in the back of my mind, I could already feel the pressure mounting. I caught myself thinking about what I might have to do to stand out, what lengths I'd have to go to secure the job. I wasn't naive. I understood that promotions didn't always come down to who worked the hardest or who had the most talent. There were politics at play, things that were sometimes out of my control. It was a Wednesday morning when my boss called me into her office. I remember the day clearly because I had just finished a report I'd been working on for weeks. The numbers looked solid, the analysis was sharp, and I thought it would finally impress her. I figured this was the moment I'd been waiting for, an opportunity to stand out, to show that I had what it took to climb the ladder. When I walked into her office, Jessica, my boss, was sitting behind her large desk. The office itself was everything you'd expect from someone in her position: sleek, clean, modern. Everything about her office screamed success. She greeted me with a smile, which was not usual. She motioned for me to sit down, and I did, trying to keep my nerves in check. I was used to these meetings, but today felt different. There was a weight in the air, something heavy, like an unspoken tension I couldn't ignore. She started with small talk, asking how I was doing and if I was happy with my current role. I gave the standard answers: I'm doing well, and everything's going great, but in the back of my mind, I was trying to figure out why I was here. This wasn't just a casual check-in. I could feel it. Then, she got to the point. I've been reviewing your work, and I have to say I'm impressed, she said, her voice smooth, but with a cold, calculated edge. You've been consistent and reliable. I think you have potential. At first, I felt a rush of pride. This was what I'd been waiting for. The recognition. The validation. But then she added, I think it's time you took the next step. The promotion you've been eyeing, it's yours, if you want it. My heart skipped a beat. The promotion. The one I'd been dreaming about for so long. I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This was my chance. But that excitement quickly faded as I noticed the way her eyes lingered on me. She leaned forward, placing her hands flat on the desk. But, she continued, her voice lowering slightly, there's something you need to understand first. I felt a knot form in my stomach. The excitement was now replaced by a cold sense of uncertainty. I braced myself for whatever was coming next. She paused for a moment, almost as if she was waiting to gauge my reaction. I'm offering you this promotion, but there's a catch. It's not just about your work. It will be about how well you can meet my needs. Your role will come with certain expectations. And I need you to understand that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stared at her, trying to make sense of it, but nothing was making sense. My heart was racing, and my mind was spinning. This was not the conversation I had imagined. She leaned back in her chair, still watching me closely. I don't want to make things complicated, but I'm going to be honest. If you want the promotion, we'll have an arrangement. No strings attached. Just an understanding between two adults. You'll satisfy me when I need it. In exchange, you'll get what you've been working for. It's that simple. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on me. I couldn't speak. I wasn't sure if I'd heard her correctly. Was she really suggesting what I thought she was suggesting? I tried to process it. This couldn't be real, right? I was a 28-year-old guy, and she was 45. She was my boss, and I had always respected her professional demeanor and the way she carried herself. Was this something all the other guys went through? Did they have to make deals like this to get ahead? Or was it just me? My mind raced as I tried to process the options in front of me. Accepting the offer meant stepping into a territory I wasn't sure I could handle. What if the affair gets exposed? It meant I will lose everything I'd built up until this point, sacrificing my dignity and self-respect for a promotion. It's against company policy to have such relationships, and she knows it. It was a choice between my values and my ambition. But rejecting it? What would that mean? It would mean staying in the same place, doing the same job, and watching others move ahead while I stayed stuck. I could say no, but what if that meant my career would never go anywhere? What if I'd missed my chance? I looked at her, and she was still waiting for my response. She didn't look nervous or ashamed, she looked confident, almost like this was a normal conversation for her. This wasn't new to her. But for me? It felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. Take some time to think about it, she said finally, her voice calm. I'm not pushing you, but I need you to understand what's at stake here. The choice is yours, but if you accept, we both know what's expected. I sat there, frozen, trying to make sense of it all. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. As I walked out of her office, I felt my heart heavy with the weight of the decision ahead of me. I didn't know what was the right choice. All I knew was that I had never been more unsure of anything in my life. The days after that conversation with her felt like I was in a fog. I couldn't focus on anything. No matter what I tried to do, my mind kept going back to what she had said. She made it sound so simple, like it was no big deal. But I couldn't shake the feeling away. I tried to tell myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed. It's just a deal, she would help me get the promotion, and in return, I would make love to her when she wants. I told myself it wouldn't be a big deal. No one would ever find out. It would be between just me and her, nothing for anyone else to see. I had worked too hard for too long to let this chance slip away just because it felt uncomfortable. I told myself it was temporary. Once or twice, she will move on and she doesn't look bad either. But still, deep down, something didn't sit right with me. Finally, the next Monday, I agreed. I remember how hard it was to say the words. A part of me didn't want to say yes, but another part knew I didn't have any other option. The moment I said yes, it felt like I had lost control. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know how this would turn out, but I couldn't take it back now. When I got promoted, it felt like everything I'd been working for had finally paid off. I had a new office, a higher salary, and more respect from my colleagues. It was a dream come true, or at least, it was supposed to be. I spent the first few days in my new office, enjoying the perks. I had a bigger desk, more authority, and a paycheck that finally matched my effort. Everyone around me seemed to look at me differently. I had arrived, or so I thought. But after a while, the excitement faded. Then came the message from my boss. We're spending the weekend together at my place. I'll send you the details. I stared at the message. I had no choice but to agree. I had made a deal with her, and now, it was time to follow through. So I replied, knowing I couldn't back out. When I showed up at her place on Friday, she seemed just as confident and composed as usual. But there was something different in the air, something I couldn't ignore. She was eager. The weekend turned out to be exhausting. It wasn't just a casual hangout, it was a weekend of intimacy that felt intense and non-stop, as if she had been holding back for a long time. I had to keep up with her, doing things I'd never thought I would do. I didn't expect it to be this much, but she kept pushing. Why was she so driven? I couldn't stop wondering, but I didn't have time to ask. I was too busy trying to keep up, feeling more and more uncomfortable. By Sunday afternoon, I was completely drained, physically sore and emotionally spent. I was left wondering if it was all worth it. Was the promotion worth this? When I finally got home on Sunday, my body ached. But it wasn't just the physical exhaustion that hit me, it was the guilt. I had spent the weekend doing things I didn't want to do. Things I had never imagined myself doing. The guilt followed me to work the next day. I tried to focus, but all I could think about was what had happened over the weekend. I felt like I was wearing a mask. Everyone around me could see the change in me, even if they didn't know why. I had to come to her when she needed me. This included going back to her house every weekend if she wanted. That was part of the deal. I started pulling away from everyone at work. I couldn't look my colleagues in the eye. I didn't want anyone to guess what was going on. Even my friends, people who had no idea what was happening, felt like strangers. I didn't have the energy to explain, and I didn't want to. At first, the arrangement seemed like a temporary, almost calculated way to get ahead in my career. I didn't think it would go beyond a few encounters. But, as the weeks went on, I realized how wrong I was. My boss, Jessica, was beginning to take control, testing the boundaries of our arrangement, and pushing it in directions I hadn't anticipated. She kept things professional in front of others, but it quickly became clear that she wasn't content with just that. She started expecting more. It was subtle at first, text messages late at night, strange, cryptic requests for me to meet her at odd hours or unexpected places. But soon, it became blatant. I began to notice a shift. She would text me during work hours to meet up, and I knew what that meant. On a few occasions, she'd ask me to join her in places where no one would be looking, empty conference rooms, storage closets, or the back stairwell. It wasn't just physical, it was psychological. She expected me to drop everything when she called, as though my whole life had become her demand. One day, it hit me. I never expected it to be like this. I was questioning everything. There were no boundaries anymore. Then came the day I realized how much deeper I was into this than I had ever imagined. It had been weeks since we last saw each other outside of work. I had convinced myself that maybe things were returning to normal. But one Wednesday afternoon, I received a message from Jessica. "Meet me in my office at 5, it said. No explanation. Just an instruction. It was routine by then. Meet her, do what she asked, and leave quickly. When I arrived, Jessica was waiting in her office, her tone casual but commanding. She told me to lock the door behind me. I thought it was just another one of those meetings where we'd discuss work. She looked at me, leaned back in her chair, and without preamble, said, "Come give it to me." The words hit me like a slap, but I couldn't back out. At that point, I had gone this far, and the consequences of saying no were unthinkable. Her power over me, the fear of losing my job, the constant reminder of the promotion I was dangling on, everything kept me silent. I did what she asked. I complied. The shame hit me immediately after. The thing about living a lie is that you never know when it's going to come crashing down on you. There was always a lingering sense of fear, like I was walking on a tightrope. As the months went by, I started noticing things, mistakes Jessica was making. She was getting careless, asking for intimacy in places where it wasn't safe. The parking lot at the company after hours, behind the supply room where the cameras didn't catch our movements. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she started acting, like no one would ever find out, like she had no fear of getting caught. The more time went on, the more reckless she became. And that's when I started to realize the stakes. What if someone saw us? What if the cameras caught us? It was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. My mind raced with the realization that not only would I lose my job, but so would she. And both of us would be exposed, humiliated. I thought we were careful. We had been discreet for months, hiding our affair from everyone. But somehow, someone found out. Someone I never expected. I had no idea Jessica had been recording our encounters. She had always been careful, but maybe she was keeping her own safety net. Somehow, those recordings got out. They were leaked, and within hours, the company had caught wind of what had been going on. At first, I thought it was just rumors. But then, colleagues started looking at me differently. They began to question how I got the promotion so quickly, and started hinting that there might be more to my success than just hard work. The whispers grew louder. One morning, I was called into HR. The head of the department sat across from me with a serious expression. They knew. The recordings had surfaced, and the company had begun an investigation. HR told me that they were looking into the situation and that I should prepare myself for the worst. I could feel my heart drop. My palms went sweaty. I knew that my career, everything I had worked for, was about to come crashing down. And it would take it down with me. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within days, the company officially dismissed both of us. The story spread beyond the office, quickly making its way to other companies in the industry. Jessica, once a powerful figure, was disgraced. I, too, was labeled with a scar I couldn't remove. As the truth came out, I felt my world implode. The shame was unbearable. Not only had I lost the promotion, but I had lost my dignity. I had compromised everything that mattered to me, my integrity, my values, and my future. But the worst part was the realization that all of this, everything, wasn't worth it. I had thought I was doing what I needed to for my career. But in reality, I had just sold myself out. Months have passed since it all happened. I've moved on and found new opportunities, but I can never forget what I did. The scars are still there, even though the world has moved on. Every day, I think about how I could have handled it differently. How I could have walked away when I had the chance. And that's why I want to share my story. I don't want anyone to make the same mistake I did. I want people to know that it's okay to say no, even when success seems just within your grasp. Integrity isn't something you can trade for a promotion. It's the only thing that will truly carry you through in the end. So, if you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, don't do it. Don't compromise yourself for the promise of something that can be taken away in an instant. Hold on to your values. No amount of success is worth losing your soul.